Brackish Water Desalination Possibilities, a capstone research paper by Abigail Brinker. One of the most important issues that is facing humanity today is the amount of water that is available. Fresh water is used around the globe and is one of the main components that support our daily life. Water is used in all different types of applications, such as agriculture, and humans and other living creatures rely on fresh water to drink, bathe, and for other purposes that we may not necessarily consider. Water is primarily divided into two categories, being fresh water and salt water. Brackish water falls between these two categories, as it is a source of water that has some salinity content in it, but not as high of a salt content as seawater. This makes it a potential new water source that could be used as fresh water if we find a way to remove the saline content from the water. This research paper investigates what could be done with brackish water to integrate different devices and ideas that already exist in these desalination efforts. Are there different marketing strategies that could be used to help any of these devices be more successful? Also, what filtration methods are currently being implemented globally to combat water issues, and can their applications be expanded? We can find these processes of application of interdisciplinary research or combining ideas from different business and engineering principles, as there may be a potential in alternative solutions. When treating brackish water with the combination of membrane distillation and reverse osmosis, desalination efforts are much more successful. Through brine recycling and cascading, there are many different ways to improve the recovery rate and ensure that the driving force doesn't decrease. Using a low-grade energy source integrates a renewable energy source into the desalination process, which can make this process have a smaller environmental footprint. Many renewable energy sources are also viable in powering this desalination model, and using a hybrid or multi-stage system has also proven to be more successful to reduce the specific energy consumption. Since the system is not self-supplying and has a very low percentage of energy that can be reused, and since most of these systems are large-scaled, there needs to be a large amount of energy supplying the system. There has also been research done to investigate how different membranes affect this process. They found that the membrane that is used during the desalination process has a great impact on the cost of the process as a whole. This process also typically has a higher energy consumption rate than typical filtration processes, but by using brackish water instead of pure seawater, the lower concentration of salt makes this process less involved. Furthermore, when treating brackish water, there will be even lower energy consumption that will be directly correlated to the concentration of sodium that is present in the solution. This study found that layers of the dissolved salts are collected on the membrane and inhibited the ability to purify the water. The cost of the membrane was not shown to be worth it to save on, since it could compromise the results and negatively impact desalination efforts. Combining multiple purification processes is the only way to ensure that the brackish water would be pure enough to be used in potable situations such as drinking. There are many ways that freshwater systems are being designed to increase the supply of fresh water and to combat the water issues that we are facing today. They focus on the possibility of installing a second distribution network of any type of non-potable water. There are a few examples of this type of a system being installed all around the world in places such as Paris and in Kuwait. This raises many issues regarding cross-contamination, since the water isn't as purified. Many of the processes that are currently used when transporting fresh water throughout the pipelines can't be used when integrating brackish water sources. Another important issue when implementing this type of model is to manage public opinions to ensure that people don't view non-potable water as being dirty but are still able to understand that it is not drinkable. Reclaimed water is already being used in places such as Jordan. However, it has gained somewhat of a bad reputation within the agriculture community among locals. This hinders desalination efforts since locals have perceptions that the water was hindering their crops. While the farmers' complaints may not necessarily be directly linked to the water quality, since there are so many other variables in their crops, but most of the farmers don't have a choice in what quality of water they're using for their fields. Some desalination efforts already exist, but there are many ways that these methods could be streamlined to minimize any environmental impacts. Globally, there are many different organizations that are trying to desalinate water to combat the lack of fresh water, and thousands of these plants exist today. Most of these operations have been relying on non-renewable energy resources, which are also becoming limited. Combining renewable energy with these efforts will greatly reduce the environmental footprint that currently exists. Integrating the many different ideas that were found through the engineering and business research will help us to come up with a more inventive solution to this greater issue. Several groups have found that introducing different types of membranes and filtration processes, such as nanofiltration as discussed within the engineering research, could be applied to smaller particles and be useful in these situations. There are two different types of research and related phenomena that are used in both engineering and business-related studies. Regarding the engineering resources, they typically used experimental studies relying on data and different information and tried to investigate the different ways that combinations of materials and processes would be used and how that would affect the end result. Regarding the business-related literature, most of them base their findings on comprehensive reviews of other studies, and the phenomena focused on the research by managing options while recycling and increasing fresh water supplied, and managing these different processes to get this kind of a device implemented. Since there are so many different ideas, both from the engineering standpoint and the business standpoint, it is pertinent to ensure that many different companies and researchers tackling this issue will be able to negotiate a deal and find the most suitable solution possible. Within each of these disciplines, there are many different solutions to the problem, especially with engineering. While most of the engineering sources discuss the same process of desalination, it is not being publicly investigated by many large companies that would be close to implementing those processes on a larger scale to actually combat the global water shortage issues. Researchers are still working to integrate many of the newer designs that have already been created with older systems that have been in place for a long time that could reduce the time until these designs could be actually implemented. Since researchers primarily focused on engineering are trying to produce the best possible device to solve the issues at hand, it is helpful to incorporate theories from business that would lend towards a more applicable solution. Brackish water is one of the most probable alternatives to fresh water since it is typically a natural freshwater source that has some content of saline in it that makes it unsuitable for typical usages. By creating a way to remove the minimal concentrations of saline from this water source, the amount of water available would greatly increase. Creating any type of combined effort through not only both of these disciplines regarding the designs and water distribution devices that exist could make a great difference in how much longer society has until fresh water levels would become non-existent. Most of these ideas are still relatively uninvestigated and could be greatly expanded upon with further research and trials to see what the practicality of globally implementing these ideas would actually be. One of the companies that is actually really well known for making these kinds of contributions is a company called Billions and Change. It is a nonprofit organization that has created a device that can remove the salinity from not only brackish water sources, but also is working to remove the salt content from even seawater sources. Therefore, any fresh or salt water source or combination of the two could turn into something that could be usable by humanity. These two disciplinary views together focus on many different aspects and different theories and concepts that are connected by integrating these disciplines. Since both of these concepts rely heavily on other subjects, bringing together other ideas that could supplement the research and face this problem from yet another angle would also be very beneficial. Since this is a global issue, there are many other disciplines such as political science that could be integrated to ensure that the final device would not only be used, to ensure that the final device would be able to be used on an international scale. Overall, the interdisciplinary approach to this problem is critical, as not only one perspective will solve a problem on this large of a scale. Hopefully something can be done to increase the amount of fresh water that is available to us and potentially use some of these ideas in order to solve this great problem.